So this weekend was the People's Summit in Chicago, and it was essentially a coming together of all these different progressive groups and voices and people to discuss progressive politics and really try and kickstart the political revolution. Now, in America, there's been this deep dissatisfaction with the two-party system, and it came out during Bernie Sanders' campaign. And it also came out in the election of Donald Trump. In fact, most people now consider themselves to be independents, more than either Democrat or Republican. So with this anger at the two-party system, one of the ideas to bring some sanity back into politics is with the Draft Bernie for a People's Party, which you can check out at draftbernie.org. So essentially the aim is to draft Bernie for his own independent party to run for president in 2020, cutting the reins free from the Democratic establishment who seem so far hell-bent on keeping the status quo. So the point here is that Bernie would be able to run on a platform of policies that are actually supported by the vast majority of people and not have to answer to rich donors, multinational corporations, or Wall Street, and really represents people. So I have to be honest, this was an idea that I wasn't all that inclined to support at the beginning. And there are reasons for that, and I'm going to get into those. So I'm going to break down this video into 3 different parts. First is I'm going to explain why we need a People's Party, and then I'm going to talk about why it may not be a good idea, and then I'm going to talk about why it is a good idea. So first, why does America need a People's Party? Well, it really stems from the fact that Congress doesn't actually represent people. So there was a Princeton University study that tracked over the course of 20 years public policy compared to what people actually want out of government. And what they found is that Congress doesn't actually care what you think. The preferences of the average American appear to have only a minuscule, near zero, statistically non-significant impact upon public policy. But if there's one thing that still reliably gets politicians' attention, it's money. While the opinions of the bottom 90% of income earners in America have a statistically non-significant impact, Gillens and Page found that economic elites, business interests, and people who can afford lobbyists still carry major influence. And I'll link to the Upworthy article and the Princeton study under the video. Okay, so America needs a People's Party to have a party that actually represents people and not just big money interests. But why is this a bad idea? And I know it kind of sounds counterintuitive for me to talk about why it's a bad idea in a video that's supposed to be about why it's a good idea. But this is where I come from. I think in order to push forward big ideas like this, we have to be honest about what the flaws of the argument are. And the number one issue with this is that money right now is incredibly important in building a party. Between 2015 and 2016, the two parties spent over $1.4 billion combined on the presidential race, and almost $1 billion spent for the House, and about $675 million for the Senate. Now, I believe those stats are just about spending from the party itself, so there's actually more money involved. And look, I'm no expert on campaign finance, but really, it comes down to the fact that it does take a lot of money to run a party nationally. I mean, it's awesome to have great ideas, but if nobody gets to hear those ideas because you can't spend the money to actually spread them, then it doesn't really mean a whole lot. And the reason a People's Party would have a tough time raising that sort of money is because, unlike the Democratic and Republican parties, a People's Party should not be run by big donor money. So it would need to be funded by small donations, which is fine if it's a single candidate like just Bernie Sanders, but if we're talking about a national party, then it gets a little dicey. So why does this idea work? Why should we support a People's Party for Bernie? So the first point is really to get away from this ideological divide between parties. So people are feeling disenfranchised from both the Republican and Democratic parties. Really, no matter what party you represent, labels sort of get in the way of messaging. So even if you have a strong, rational voice like Nina Turner in the Democratic Party, the fact that she is a Democrat immediately turns a lot of people off. So it actually takes more work for someone who is not a Democrat to want to absorb that message, simply because it's coming from someone who names himself a Democrat. And really, it comes down to the fact that the Democratic Party is still associated with Hillary Clinton and Nancy Pelosi and Wall Street and these big money people. So even though there are a diverse set of views within the Democratic Party, like, for example, Tulsi Gabbard, who is extremely progressive, the fact that she is a Democrat hurts her. And conversely, being a Republican can hurt a candidate. Because a lot of people, when they hear that you're Republican, they immediately think white, racist, bigoted, even if that's not the case. So in having a People's Party, a party that, on the face of it, represents people, it now becomes a battle of policy, a battle of ideas, as opposed to a battle of labels. And the policy would really be driven by actual statistics, what people want. And when you look at polling, the vast majority of people want single-payer healthcare. They want money out of politics, and they want to raise the minimum wage. So being able to bring all these ideas together into a candidate like Bernie Sanders, who has been pushing these progressive policies his entire career, really only makes sense. Now, the main reason why drafting Bernie for a People's Party would work is because it would work. I really think that if this happens, he would win. I mean, if you take a look at the 2016 election, you see how disillusioned people are with the political process. People don't like either party. Donald Trump was largely voted in because he appeared as an outsider. People didn't want the status quo anymore. They wanted somebody to come in and break the system. And that really stems from the fact that there is this deep economic anxiety within the country that's not being answered. People don't lash out against the system unless they feel that it's not working for them. And the Democratic Party is having a very difficult time learning that lesson. So if there isn't a major shift within the Democratic Party between now and 2018, then it makes a lot of sense to run or to draft Bernie for a People's Party in 2020. So I do think that this would work in terms of a presidential election where there is national exposure and it doesn't require as much money on the ground. But there's still a lot of money involved. The hope is, though, that that would be offset by the ideas and the anger that there exists between people and the current two-party system. So while I'm now finally coming around to this idea to draft Bernie for a People's Party in 2020, I don't think that we should stop fighting on other fronts. So groups like Justice Democrats and Brand New Congress, who are working to actually enact change within the Democratic Party, I think are brilliant. And people should push that, and people should vote for those candidates. When it comes to a national level, I think it's smart to start planning now and see if there's a proper shift within the Democratic Party between now and 2018. And if there isn't, then I say draft Bernie for a People's Party.